The ache in Viktor Kovac's leg echoed a career brutally snatched away. At 52, a decorated fire captain, he was deemed obsolete. Yet a guardian never retires. On Oakhaven's quiet streets, he found a new battlefield, transforming forgotten fire hydrants into gleaming, defiant monuments of service. The protest of Viktor Kovac's left leg began before the sun crested the rooftops of Oakhaven. It wasn't a sharp cry, but a low, insistent thrum in the marrow of his tibia, a phantom echo of the collapsing roof beam that had ended his career. 28 years of service as a firefighter, a captain leading men into chaos, extinguished not by a blaze, but by the splintering crack of bone and the cold, clipped finality of a surgeon's report. At 52, he was a captain without a crew, a warrior pensioned off from his war. So he created his own. His battlefield was the quiet, tree-lined streets of Oakhaven, a town so peaceful it seemed to have forgotten the very concept of emergency. His soldiers were the forgotten fire hydrants, their red paint faded to a sad, rusty pink, their caps seized tight with seasons of neglect. Every morning, after a slow, deliberate process of dressing that was a battle in itself, he would load his battered Ford Ranger. The tools were laid out on a canvas drop cloth with surgical precision. A heavy-duty spanner wrench for the operating nut, a wire brush for the rust, penetrating oil for the threads, and the cans of paint. Not just any red, but the specific, glorious shade of safety red he ordered online, the same used by the Cleveland Fire Department. It was a cost he absorbed without a second thought. To his neighbors, he was just Old Vic, the widower with a peculiar, obsessive hobby. They'd offer pitying smiles and waves from their porches as he limped from his truck, a man finding a way to fill the long, silent days. Mrs. Gable from down the street once told him it was nice he was keeping busy. She meant well, but the words stung, reducing his life's calling to a pastime, like knitting or bird-watching. They saw the action, but they missed the ritual. They didn't see the way he'd first clear the base of weeds and overgrown grass, ensuring a full 36-inch clearance. They didn't understand the expert twist of the wrench as he tested the pumper and steamer caps, his trained ear listening for the subtle sounds of a healthy, well-lubricated mechanism. They didn't recognize the methodical scraping of rust as a fight against decay, against the slow, creeping erasure of readiness. For Victor, each hydrant was a post, a responsibility. The silence in the house he'd once shared with his wife, Mary, was a constant, low hum of absence. This purposeful work was the only thing that quieted it. Each restored hydrant, gleaming and proud on its corner, was a small, defiant monument to a life of service that refused to be forgotten. It was his last stand, fought on the quiet curbs of a town that didn't know it was still being protected. From his bedroom window, Aiden Chen had a clear view of the corner of Elm Street and 3rd Avenue, and for the past 2 weeks, that corner had become his private theater. At 16, Aiden lived more through the lens of his old DSLR camera than through his own eyes. He was a quiet kid, the type to notice the way sunlight filtered through the leaves of the great oak in the park, or the intricate pattern of a spider's web glistening with morning dew. While his peers were chasing viral dance challenges and prank videos, Aiden's small YouTube channel was a repository of quiet moments, a time-lapse of a flower blooming, the patient work of a watchmaker he'd met at the farmer's market. He was hunting for stories hidden in plain sight, and he had found a powerful one in the form of the old man in the Ford Ranger. At first, it was just a curiosity. He'd see the truck pull up, watch the man, Mr. Kovac. He thought his name was limp out and begin his strange ritual with a fire hydrant. Aiden's dad had vaguely explained the man was a retired firefighter. "Guess he can't let it go," he'd said with a shrug, the comment dissolving back into the evening news. But Aiden saw more. He started paying closer attention, using the 200 zoom lens on his camera not to be intrusive, but to understand. He saw things that you'd miss in a casual glance. He watched Mr. Kovac kneel on a thick foam pad, his face tight with the effort it cost his bad leg, to meticulously clean the threaded outlets with a small, brass-bristled brush. He saw him lay out his tools on a canvas drop cloth, a surgeon preparing his instruments. There was a specific sequence. First the wire brush on the body, then the oil on the cap threads, then a firm but careful turn with the wrench to ensure it wasn't seized. One afternoon, Aiden watched as Mr. Kovac even produced a specialized gauge, briefly attaching it to one of the nozzles. He wasn't just painting. He was inspecting, maintaining, caring. Aiden's perception shifted from curiosity to a deep, burgeoning respect. This wasn't a hobby born of boredom. This was a craft. It was a silent, one-man protest against neglect. He saw the way other people passed by. The jogger who didn't break stride, the mailman who offered a cursory nod, the teenagers in a car who laughed at something on their phone, completely oblivious. They saw a stooped old man painting a piece of metal. Aiden saw a guardian standing his post. The decision solidified in his mind one golden evening as he watched Mr. Kovac apply the final, perfect coat of red. The hydrant, once a pathetic, rusted stump, now stood vibrant and ready, a beacon in the setting sun. It was beautiful, it was important, and no one else was seeing it. That night, Aiden went through his footage, his heart pounding with a new sense of purpose. This story had to be told. Aiden spent the next week immersed in the project, the quiet hum of his computer a constant presence in his room. He sifted through hours of footage, looking for the moments that best captured the essence of Mr. Kovac's work. He chose the shot of his gnarled, steady hands gripping the wrench, the close-up of his face etched with concentration, a bead of sweat tracing a path through the grime on his temple, the slow-motion clip of the final, sweeping brushstroke of red paint, transforming the dull metal into something vital. He decided against any narration. Mr. Kovac's actions spoke louder than any words Aiden could write. Instead, he found a piece of instrumental music online, a simple, melancholic piano melody that slowly built into a powerful, hopeful crescendo. He meticulously timed the cuts to the rhythm of the music, letting the story unfold visually. The finished video was 3 minutes and 27 seconds long. It was simple, direct, and deeply respectful. After a long moment of hesitation, he typed out the title, The Guardian of Oakhaven, a one-man fire department. He added a brief description. An unnamed hero in my town has taken it upon himself to make sure our fire hydrants are ready. I don't think he knows anyone is watching. He clicked Upload. For the first 3 days, the video sat in the quiet corner of YouTube reserved for unwatched passion projects. It garnered 47 views, most of them likely from Aiden himself, checking the count. Then, on Wednesday afternoon, something shifted. A comment appeared, not from a classmate but from a user named Engine Coffertine. It read, "This man is a pro. Look at his technique on the stem nut. That's old school discipline, respect." Soon after, the view count ticked past 1,000. Aiden discovered it had been shared on a Reddit forum, R Firefighting. From there, it was picked up by a Facebook page for retired first responders. The comments section exploded, transforming from a quiet space into a roaring chorus of approval. They were written in the specific lexicon of the profession. Static pressure test, I bet. This guy knows his stuff. That's not just paint, that's pride. My city's hydrants haven't looked that good in 20 years. Where is this man? This is what it means to be a brother for life. Someone find him and buy him a beer. Aiden sat back, scrolling through the flood of messages, a dizzying mix of awe and gratitude washing over him. He had wanted to show that one person's dedication mattered. He never imagined that his quiet observation would resonate with an entire community of people who understood, in their bones, exactly what they were seeing. 250 miles away, in a sterile, glass-walled office on the 42nd floor of a Chicago skyscraper, Eleanor Vance was having a very bad day. At 45, she was the vice president of risk management for Keystone Properties, a massive commercial real estate developer. Her job was a relentless war against liability, a never-ending parade of building code violations, insurance premium hikes, and lazy contractors. Today's particular headache was a portfolio of aging strip malls across the Midwest, each with its own set of infrastructural problems. The latest report on her desk detailed how a contracted maintenance crew in Indiana had inspected 15 fire hydrants across 3 properties by simply taking a photo of them from their truck and billing for a full 8-hour service. Frustrated, she rubbed her temples and took a sip of her cold coffee. The sheer, brazen incompetence was infuriating, but it was the specific nature of the failure that gnawed at her. It was personal. When Alina was 19, she had watched from across the street as her family's hardware store, a business built over 2 generations, burned to the ground. She remembered the sickening smell of burning paint and plastic, the roar of the flames, and the desperate, frantic shouts of the firefighters. And she remembered the single, devastating moment of failure, the fire captain turning from the nearest hydrant, his face a mask of disbelief and rage, screaming that it was dry, completely useless. A post-fire investigation revealed a main valve that had been seized by rust and neglect for years. The store was a total loss. The memory was a permanent scar, the driving force behind her meticulous, almost obsessive career path. She didn't just manage risk. She waged a personal crusade against the kind of complacency that destroys lives. It was in this state of mind that her young, perpetually online assistant, David, knocked on her doorframe. "Sorry to interrupt, Miss Vance, but I think you need to see this. It's going viral in some niche communities, but it feels relevant." He placed his tablet on her desk. The video, The Guardian of Oakhaven, began to play. Alina watched, her initial annoyance at the interruption quickly dissolving into rapt attention. She saw the old man's limp, the deliberate way he laid out his tools. She saw him clean the threads, check the caps. She saw the pride in his posture as he applied the final coat of paint. This wasn't a man going through a checklist. This was a man who understood the sacred promise a hydrant represented. He was treating that piece of municipal iron with the reverence of a soldier maintaining his rifle. He embodied the very principle she fought and failed to instill in her own teams, a sense of profound personal ownership. "Where is this?" she asked, her voice sharp, cutting through the video's gentle piano score. "Oakhaven, Ohio, looks like. Small town south of Toledo," David replied, already typing into his own computer. "Find out who he is," Alina commanded, her eyes still locked on the screen on the anonymous man's face. A plan was already forming, a bold, unconventional idea that made her feel more energized than she had in months. She wasn't just looking at a viral video. She was looking at the answer to her problem. The black Audi sedan felt alien on the quiet streets of Oakhaven, its polished exterior a stark contrast to the town's modest, well-worn charm. Alina found Victor on a corner near the local library, working on a hydrant that looked particularly forlorn. He was on his knees, wrestling with a stubborn cap, his face a grimace of pained determination. He looked up as her expensive-looking shoes came into his line of sight, his expression immediately clouding with suspicion. He was used to being ignored or pitied. He wasn't used to being approached by women in tailored business suits. He braced himself for a complaint, a bureaucratic warning, or some well-meaning but misguided attempt to get him to take it easy. "Mr. Kovac," Alina asked, her voice steady and direct. Victor's eyes narrowed. "Who's asking?" Instead of answering directly, Alina pointed a manicured finger at the hydrant. "You're using a single-component polyurethane topcoat over a zinc phosphate primer," she stated, not as a question, but as an observation. "Good choice for abrasion resistance, but I'm curious why you didn't go with a 2-part epoxy. Some municipalities prefer it for long-term water immersion." Victor froze, the wrench in his hand suddenly feeling weightless. He slowly pushed himself to his feet, his bad leg protesting loudly. He stared at her, utterly baffled. In all the months he'd been doing this, no one had ever asked him about his choice of primer. Most people didn't even know what primer was. "Epoxy's tougher," he grunted, his voice raspy with disuse, But it's brittle in the freeze-thaw cycles we get here. Cracks. Let's moisture in. Polyurethane has more flex. A slow smile spread across Aliner's face. Exactly. Just then a nervous voice called out, "Mr. Kovac, is everything okay?" Aiden was approaching, his camera clutched in his hands like a shield. He had seen the fancy car and the strange woman and feared the worst, that his video had brought some kind of official trouble down on his unwitting subject. Alina turned her smile to Aiden, a look of genuine appreciation in her eyes. "You must be the filmmaker," she said. "Aiden Chen, right?" Aiden just nodded, speechless. Turning back to Victor, Alina's expression grew more serious, more personal. "My family lost everything in a fire when I was 19, Mr. Kovac," she said, her voice dropping slightly. "The closest hydrant was out of service, neglected. What you're doing here, it's not a hobby. It's a standard of care that I have been trying and failing to find." She took a breath and laid it all out. She told him about Keystone Properties, about the hundreds of commercial and residential developments under her purview, about the endless fight against mediocrity. Then came the offer. "I'm not here to offer you a job painting hydrants," she said, her gaze unwavering. "I'm here to offer you a position. I want to create a new role for you. Fire safety and infrastructure consultant for Keystone Properties. Your job would be to travel to our sites, to assess our systems, to train our maintenance teams, and to teach them what real readiness looks like. To teach them your standard." The world seemed to tilt on its axis for Victor. Consultant, him. The word sounded foreign, like something from another man's life. He looked from Alina's earnest face to Aiden's wide, hopeful eyes. He looked down at his own hands, calloused and stained with red paint. For months, he had been fighting a silent, lonely battle against his own obsolescence. He thought he had lost. Now, this stranger was telling him his quiet acts of defiance were not the end of his career, but the foundation for a new one. The dam of stoicism he had built around his heart for years finally broke. A hot, unfamiliar pressure built behind his eyes. He felt the heavy wrench slip slightly in his grip, and with a voice thick with emotion he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years, he managed a single, decisive word. "Okay." 6 months later, the man who stepped out of a brand-new Ford F-150, with the Keystone Properties logo discreetly on the door, was a different Victor Kovac. He still had the limp. That was a permanent part of his story, but it no longer seemed like a mark of defeat. It was a testament to his experience. His uniform was no longer faded jeans and a t-shirt, but crisp, practical work trousers and a polo shirt embroidered with his name and new title. V. Kovac, Infrastructure Consultant. His days were no longer spent in the solitary quiet of Oakhaven streets. Instead, they were filled with purpose and noise. He traveled across 3 states, from sprawling new housing developments in Indiana to high-rise commercial properties in Michigan. He no longer wielded a paintbrush, but a red pen, marking up architectural blueprints and site plans. He'd stand before groups of young, college-educated engineers and seasoned maintenance crews, and with the unshakable authority of a man who had seen fire's destructive power firsthand, he would point out their blind spots. He'd tap a blueprint and say, "Your schematics show this hydrant 50 feet from the building entrance, but you've got a retaining wall and decorative landscaping there. A pumper truck can't get within 20 feet of it. It's useless." He taught them things that weren't in their textbooks: how to spot the early signs of main line corrosion, the importance of color-coding hydrant caps by their GPM flow rate, the simple, life-saving logic of ensuring clearance not just for a person, but for a firefighter in full gear, dragging a heavy, charged hose line. His insights were so practical, so rooted in undeniable real-world logic, that the company officially codified them. They became known, internally, as the Kovac Standards. He had found a new battlefield, and on it he was once again a captain, his wisdom and experience protecting thousands of people he would never meet. The ache in his leg was still there, a constant companion, but now it felt less like a reminder of what he had lost and more like the price of the knowledge he now had to share. On a bright Saturday afternoon, Victor pulled his work truck, not the old Ranger, into a spot in front of the Oakhaven Town Cafe. He was back for the weekend, but this time, it was for a meeting. Inside, Aiden Chen was waiting, nervously tapping his fingers on a menu. Victor slid into the booth opposite him, placing a long, rectangular box on the table between them. He pushed it toward the boy. "This is for you," he said, his voice carrying a new, easy confidence. Aiden looked at him, then at the box. He carefully lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in custom-fit foam, was a brand-new professional-grade telephoto lens. It was a serious piece of equipment, far beyond anything Aiden could have afforded. I can't accept this, Mr. Kovac," Aiden stammered, his eyes wide. "This is too much." "Nonsense," Victor said with a wave of his hand. "Consider it a finder's fee. Or better yet, the first payment from my new consulting business. You were my first and most important marketing agent." He leaned forward, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "You used your lens to help the world see me, Aiden. When I thought I was invisible, I want this one to help you see more of the world." Aiden slowly reached out and touched the cool metal of the lens, his fingers tracing the maker's name. A huge, irrepressible grin spread across his face. He looked up at Victor, his gratitude too big for words. They sat for a while, sipping their coffee, two people from different generations whose lives had intersected in the most unexpected way. Victor told him about a recent trip to a new construction site, and Aiden talked about a documentary film contest he was thinking of entering. Through the cafe window, they could see the hydrant on the corner, the one where they had first truly met. It stood there, gleaming and steadfast in the afternoon sun, a small, silent monument to them both, a testament to the quiet guardian who refused to give up, and the observant boy who knew his story was worth telling.